Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Andy here. I went from depressed and suicidal to living a life of abundance and joy. If I can do it, you sure as hell can too. I am a little bit tired. I am on day 4 of a 5-day fast. I might extend it a little bit longer than that, but day 4 of a 5-day fast. So I may be a little energy drained, a little tired, but let's jump straight into it. This is part 3 of a course or a series that I'm doing about breaking the rules and some of the rules that were sort of given to me or implied, a lot of the rules and the templates for life that most of us are given. And I've just felt throughout my life, I've been given this set of rules of how life should be lived or what the correct way of doing things is and what I'm supposed to do. And so this video series, this 3-part series, is me sort of pointing out some of the rules that I've come to see were not super helpful for me, were kind of detrimental to my own happiness, but at the same time, none of this is me telling you how you should live your life. Kind of the entire point of these 3 videos is me saying, I didn't like it when people told me how I should live my life, so I'm certainly not the person that's going to sit here and tell you how to live your life. If anything, these videos are sort of here for me to maybe get some of you to start thinking about what it is that you want from your life, what sort of person that you want to be, what sort of rules that you want to set for yourself, because at the end of the day, this is your world. We're all just living in it. So the very first or the next set of rules that we're going to look at that were given to me were during the lockdowns in 2020 and in my country also in 2021 and a little bit in 2022. We had a lot of like lockdowns and hysteria and rules and all that sort of stuff when it came to the pandemic that shall not be named. And my God, like I'm going to kind of summarize this. I won't go through every single rule that was given, especially in my country and especially in the city that I was first living in, where it got to the point where some of the rules were utterly insane. You could only go outside the house for 1 hour a day. You had to have permission slips with you, like literally a piece of paper saying that you had permission to be outside of the house for reasons like going to work. It's literally like some Nazi Germany stuff or the Soviet Union, where you had like permission slips to leave the house. And you could only go to you had to nominate one friend or one family member, and you were only allowed to visit that one family member. And so basically for the entire pandemic, you were supposed to pick one person, one friend or one family member, and that was the only person that you're allowed to see for 1 hour a day. And you could only go to their house or they could come to yours. You couldn't go to other friends. There's just so many insane rules. They locked down the city that I was living in. I was living in Melbourne. We left and I'm quite comfortable saying this now. We left through back streets. We basically had to sneak out. They had like police, what would you call it? Like roadblocks and all of this shit set up. They called it the Ring of Steel. They set this like ring, this radius around the center of the city, and they locked it down with police. And there are a couple of little exits that some people knew how to get out, and we were able to network and find out what those were. And so we escaped and we went to the countryside. But yeah, it was like some psycho shit. And there was several protests, and they had like riot police that were shooting people with rubber bullets and tear gas. It was like, it went above and beyond in terms of like rules and that sort of stuff. So, I could go on, and at the time I did, I covered it a little bit in some of my podcasts. I tried not to talk about it too much, and I'm not going to sit here and talk about it a whole lot now, because generally speaking, I like my content, and I guess I would say I like myself as a person as well, keeping it pretty positive. And so don't take any of this as me complaining. Now, at the time, I felt very negative about it. I felt very upset. I was believing a lot of my own stories that, they shouldn't be like this. The government should be more loving and kind. People shouldn't be so stressed. People shouldn't be freaking out over a disease that the average age of mortality, the average age of dying from this disease is like 85.6 years old or something. So that is older than the average life expectancy of the average human being. That doesn't sound like a very scary disease, does it? It does if you watch the news. But anyway, ignoring all of that, there were a lot of rules that were sort of put onto myself and Imogen and everyone, obviously, that just didn't really resonate with me. The biggest one being you can't go outside. And right from the get-go, when they first started talking about lockdowns and not going outside, alarm bells just started going off in my head. And I did a whole bunch of research. And, I won't get into all of that right now because, again, this isn't like a rabbit hole video, but I did a lot of research and I listened to my own intuition and my own observations about what it means to be a human being. And the very first thing that really came up to me was I don't think staying inside is healthy. I don't think that is how you combat illness. I don't think that that is how I, Andy, would like to live my life. And I very much felt this sense of all of society has this rule, which great, people can have whatever rules that they want to have, but it just doesn't gel with me. It doesn't seem to make sense. And we had quite a few friends that felt exactly the same way, and maybe some of you might feel the same way. And by the way, if some of you don't, if you feel like, lockdowns and not going outside and wearing masks was, what you wanted to do, then beautiful. Again, I want everybody to do what they want to do, but it was these rules being forced upon myself and Imogen and other people without any consent, without any general democracy or referendums or consideration by, as to what other people might want. It was just this blanket sort of hard and fast rule of you're not allowed to go outside. You have to wear a mask, You need to be controlled. You need to stay at home. You need to think of grandmother. You need to think of other people. You need to sacrifice your own happiness and what you want because somebody else might die. Again, average age of mortality of this disease was 86 or 84, whatever it was above the average life expectancy. And okay, so that, I'm not just making this up. The median age for those who died of COVID-19 was 84.7 years old. This is in Australia, by the way, but it tends to be basically the same in most of the other countries. And then the average life expectancy in Australia is 83.2 years. So people made jokes that, hey, wait, doesn't that mean that COVID technically extended your life by what is that, 1.5 years? Technically, COVID makes you live 1.5 years longer than the average life expectancy, whatever. This isn't a big, giant criticism of government policy or hysteria due to the media and all of that. We could go down a big rabbit hole here, but I want to keep this video relatively light, like I do with most of my channel, right? We keep it pretty positive. So there were these rules that were put on myself and Imogen and everybody else, and they just didn't really gel with me. I could feel myself slipping further and further into depression. The more I sat at home, the more I didn't go outside and didn't see my friends and didn't go for walks and didn't do the things that I loved to do. And I am someone that is very familiar with depression and suicidal, ideations or thoughts or fantasies or whatever you want to call that, having been depressed for a hell of a lot of my teenage years and then up until I was about, 22, 23, somewhere around there. So about 8 years of depression and many, many, many years of holding a knife to my wrist and, walking in front of or crossing the road and thinking I could just stop right now and maybe this truck would hit me and end all the pain. I'm someone that's very familiar with the feelings of depression and, the causes in my own life and the things that pulled me out of depression. And more than anything, if I could sum up depression for me, and people get depressed for many different reasons, but for me, if I could sum up why I was depressed for 8 years, when I was younger, and how I moved away from it, I would literally sum it up as I didn't go outside and do anything, and that caused a lot of depression. And the more I stayed at home, the more depressed I got. And how I improved it was going outside and talking to other human beings and participating in this beautiful stage play that we call life. And so I noticed more and more people getting depressed as well. There are a lot of COVID depressions. Obviously, if you make people stay at home and all they have to entertain themselves is Netflix and, Uber Eats or DoorDash and, phones and TikTok and all of that kind of stuff and alcohol, yeah, the population will get pretty depressed. And so I just noticed this rule that was sort of put on everybody that was safety comes first and safety is more important than happiness. Fuck your happiness. We need to prioritize safety. And that is something that, to zoom out a little bit and get away from the lockdown stuff, it's something that a lot of people sort of have as a default philosophy. Like, those two things aren't mutually incompatible, like happiness and taking risks and living your life and really going for what you want and risking rejection versus safety and comfort and never having to get rejected. Those two things aren't mutually incompatible. It's kind of like a spectrum or a sliding scale, but we'll make it mutually incompatible for a second just for the sake of this conversation. There are a lot of people that put themselves firmly in that safety camp and they just say, I don't care about like taking risks. I have no interest in going out there. The world is a big, scary place. For the most part, I'm going to prioritize comfort and happiness. I'm going to overeat. I'm going to choose junk food. I'm going to self medicate. I'm going to drink alcohol. I'm going to spend my weekends avoiding the fact that I have to go to work. You don't have to, but that I'm choosing to go to work on Monday. I'm going to ignore that. And when it comes to Monday, I'm going to complain that it's Monday again. The vast majority of human beings place comfort and security and safety above risk taking and going for what they want. And generally speaking, if you're watching this channel, you're probably, again, it's not binary, it's not one or the other, but you probably tend a little bit more towards freedom and risking a little bit of rejection and trying some things and failing or making mistakes. And I don't believe in failure or making mistakes. I think everything is a learning lesson. But if you're watching this content, you probably take a few risks. You probably look a little silly sometimes. You probably get rejected sometimes. You're probably in that camp. And again, it's not one or the other. It's a spectrum and it's a scale. But I saw a lot of people that were very afraid to live during 2020, 2021, and 2022. They were very afraid to live in case something bad happened. And it really, for me, solidified my love of freedom. It really solidified how much I value taking risks and risking death a little bit in tiny little ways. Because when we go out, let's use this example. When you go outside to hit on women and you risk rejection, there is a small part of you that feels a little bit of death. It's like ego death, or it's a fear of death. That's what you're afraid of when you go outside to hit on someone. You're afraid of rejection and that you'll get in trouble, or they'll hurt your feelings and you'll get kicked out of the tribe, or you'll be all alone forever, or you'll look stupid. And that comes from a sense of like a fear of death. And so I'm someone that's always run towards my fears. And if I feel a fear of death, or if I feel like something bad might happen if I do this thing, I'm like, great, let's do it anyway. Because the alternative is me sitting at home in the comfort and the safety and the security of this beautiful apartment. And I love this apartment. Maybe you can see little bits of it back here. It's a beautiful apartment. It's cozy. It's nice. I love this apartment. But if I sit here and don't go outside and take risks, there is something inside of me that gets a little bit depressed. And the reason that I get depressed is because there's a part of me that knows that's not being honest with myself. That's not having integrity. That's not listening. It's not a kindness to myself. And I didn't quite have the language to express this stuff during all of the lockdowns because I was just at that point very angry and I hadn't worked on peace and love and spirituality and all of that sort of stuff. That stuff literally only came about because of all the lockdowns, because I was hurting so badly that I went and saw a spiritual coach and he basically talked me through a lot of these concepts. And then I found Byron Katie. And then I found David Hawkins, and then I started reading more Buddhism stuff and started figuring out what I want for my life and being more honest about it. Massive transformation over the last 3 years. But a lot of that stuff came because I realized these rules, or let's just say these rules of security and safety comes first, and happiness is almost like, if we get around to it, we'll be happy. But as long as we're safe and secure, that's all we care about. And it doesn't matter if we're miserable. I realized that just really didn't apply to me. And there are so many examples I see of that kind of rule, and again, that rule isn't bad. If you're somebody that does prioritize safety and security and comfort, beautiful, great. I want you to do whatever you want to do. That is the purpose of these 3 videos about rules and how there are no rules and blah, blah, blah. Well, there doesn't have to be rules. But I just came to see that so much of society does hold safety and comfort and security as like their highest ideal. It's almost like people are so afraid to die, which, yeah, most people are afraid of death. That it's something that most people haven't ever confronted or thought about or learned to love. You can eventually love the idea that you're going to die. Like, take your time with that. Be gentle with that one. That's taken me, I don't know, my entire life to get to this point where I'm absolutely in love with the fact that I will die one day. But it can take a little while to get there. Be gentle with that. But most people are so afraid of death and of the fact that they are mortal and that they won't live forever, that everything they do in their life, they are doing to avoid death or avoid a little death. And by little death, I mean, a social death, an ego death, being rejected, being embarrassed. They're afraid to look in the mirror because they can see that they're getting a little older or a little fatter, and that reminds them of their own mortality and their own incoming death. And so most people avoid death, and a lot of actions are coming from avoiding death. You listening, might be in that same boat yourself. Maybe you're avoiding rejection with the opposite sex, or maybe you're avoiding asking your boss for a promotion because you're a little bit afraid of a little death. You're afraid of what might happen if your boss says no, or what might happen if your boss fires you and you lose that job. You might be afraid of like, fuck, what if I really go for what I want and people tell me no, and then I look even stupider? What if I break up with my partner that I'm really unhappy with? That could be an ego death of like a social death. What if people, around me say I shouldn't have made that decision? People are terrified of making the wrong decision because it brings up our fear of death, or our fear of like social death, like being kicked out of the tribe, so to speak. And so maybe you listening might have little parts of this. And if you do, that's okay. I do too. I still, to this day, I will hear my ego going off and it will be like, no, don't do that. Like, you might get rejected. And then I'll be like, what bad thing happens if I get rejected? And then I'll play it to its logical conclusion. Well, if I'm rejected, then, everyone will reject me. Okay, and then what happens? And then I'll be all alone. Okay, and then what happens? And then I'll die alone. Okay, so you're scared of death. Oh, yeah, but death is inevitable. I don't mind death. Death is a beautiful thing. It helps make me grateful for the life that I have. And so the point is, I see a lot of people, maybe most people, I'm going to say 99.9%, maybe 99%. I don't know. I made that number up. 99% of people are really, really, really terrified of death, to the point where it colors every action that they take. If you look around and really pay attention, and maybe start with yourself, you can look at yourself and see how much of your actions are coming from a fear of eventual death, or a fear of social death, or a fear of ego death. Most people don't want to be told that they're wrong. Most people are terrified of ever being called a hypocrite. Most people are terrified of ever being told that their ideas are stupid. Most people are terrified of ever saying something and then later on you realize that that wasn't true and something else was actually true, and then you look like an idiot. Most people are terrified of these things, and I used to be as well. Funnily enough, the thing that happened the most was, or that helped the most, was doing this content. Me sitting down in front of all of you, that's a fucking ego death, because no matter what you say, somebody will disagree with you. No matter what you say, somebody will point out how maybe your idea wasn't as intelligent and fleshed out and, brilliant as maybe you thought it was. And over time, over the last 5 years, I've just come to see that I am, and I mean this in the most beautiful way, a complete and utter dumbass. I am. It's why I say all the time, I don't have all the answers for all of you. I'm not the expert. I'm just some bald guy. I guess right now I'm wearing a hat, but I am some bald guy on the internet just talking into a microphone, into a video camera, doing my best to serve you and be here for you and be useful to you, but I don't have all the fucking answers. I'm a dumbass just like you. The difference is I am more comfortable saying that I'm a dumbass, and plenty of you do. Plenty of you would, admit that you're not perfect, but most of you, or a lot of you, I don't know all of you individually, so a lot of you will be terrified of ever looking stupid. And most of your questions, or a lot of your questions, come from that place. A lot of the questions that people leave in YouTube comments, a lot of the questions I get in the coaching program, is the person basically saying, hey, Andy, how do I avoid looking stupid? How do I avoid rejection? How do I avoid that ego death? How do I avoid ever looking wrong? And as I say all the time, what would happen if you just gave yourself permission to suck? Like, what bad thing would happen if you look imperfect, or you look silly, or you look awkward, or clumsy, or like you don't know what you're doing, or you lose a girl or lose a guy that you really like? What bad thing happens? And so I'm, again, really grateful to all of you that I get to sit here and do this kind of content with all of you and leave my ego behind as best as I possibly can and slowly chip away at that ego. Really, it's that you're learning to love your ego and let go of your ego at the same time. But I love that I get this beautiful opportunity where I can sit here and say, hey, guess what? I'm Andy. I'm a complete fucking dumbass. And I don't have to operate from this place of fear of death. And again, to bring it back to this point of conversation, during all of the lockdowns, I just saw so many people that were really scared, and I wanted to give all of them hugs. But obviously, lockdowns were a time when nobody was allowed to hug each other. Although there were some that I did, where I would say to someone, we'd be talking for a while, and I'd say, like, I really want to give you a hug. Would you like that? And they would say yes, and I'd give them a big hug. And God, some people like fucking, one woman I can think of in particular, we went to this like museum once the museums had opened up after a couple of years of being, open, then closed, then open, then closed, then open, then closed, then open, then closed. But we were at this museum and there was this worker there and she was just so unbelievably sweet. And I think she'd just missed human connection or something, because nobody was going to the fucking museums because they'd been closed for so long. And everyone's wearing a mask except for Imogen and I. And that was another rule, that you had to wear a mask, but we just didn't. And we were basically the only, it felt like at times, in our old city especially, it felt like we were the only people who'd ever not worn a mask. But anyway, so we're talking to this lady and she talked to us for like 45 minutes and she was telling us about her children and her grandchildren. She was this older lady and it just felt like she had missed human connection like fucking crazy. And at the end of it, she's almost like crying with just like, and she keeps telling us over and over again, like, thank you. And she's getting closer and closer to us the entire time, because at the start, everyone's like keeping their distance, like people were doing during that time. And she's getting closer and closer to us. And finally, after like 45 minutes, I'm like, can I give you a hug? And she's like, I would. And she's like almost crying. And we give her a big hug. And it's just this beautiful moment. And, then we kept looking around the gallery and then we leave. And because to be clear, she was a worker. She worked there, or a volunteer. As we're leaving, she's talking to like one of the other staff members and they're just, they're deep in conversation. And then she goes, oh, that's them now. And, we go over and I was like, were you talking about us? And she's like, yeah. And she's like almost fucking in tears. And she's talking about like, this beautiful young couple, like, Imogen and I, and they were so nice to me. And we were like, woman, you were the one that was nice to us. And so we gave her another hug and we left. And it was this beautiful, like, connection moment. And I think that's what most people were missing during lockdowns, because most people had prioritized, we have to avoid, any risk of death. We have to just be ultra safe and we have to lock ourselves down and not leave the house and wear masks and not talk to other human beings and not have intimacy and not have sex and not have friendships and have none of that shit and not connect with our fellow human beings, and instead see our fellow human beings as a potential death risk. Like every single person outside could have a fucking cough and they could cough on you and you could fucking die. And there was a reason why the world lost their mind, and I think it was because they were focusing in on that fear of death. But most people still didn't even embrace their fear of death, which is amazing to me. With death all around them, and obviously people did die from COVID, although let's just leave it at that statement. People did die from COVID. Of course they did. But with all of that death around, you would think that people would be like, all right, like, is this a good opportunity to, or it's not even an opportunity. I don't have a choice. Let me face death. Let me face my own mortality. But no, most people sort of used all the death that was around them to sort of, and there wasn't even death. So I am going to correct that statement. I'll think of a less clumsy way to say this. It's not like there was people dying in the fucking streets. So I'll phrase it like that. But people were acutely aware of people who died from or with COVID. So there's clearly death happening. People are clearly focused in on it. People can clearly see that it's happening. And yet nobody is willing to address I mean, lots of people were, but lots of people didn't address their own fear of death and their own impending mortality and all of that. They just buried their heads even deeper under self-medication and a lot of that sort of stuff. So I noticed all of that. And to me, COVID and people dying and lockdowns and all of that and a global pandemic and all of the fear and all of that sort of stuff, that gave me this beautiful opportunity, or I took it as an opportunity to face my own mortality. And I'd already sort of faced it over the last, like 15 years, especially when you are suicidal for 8 or so years and you come out of that. That really gets you deeply acquainted with the concept of death, like very much so. But this lockdown stuff really gave me this even deeper, I guess, gratitude and appreciation for life, because I realized how precious life was to me. When people tell you that you can't go outside, and if you do go outside, it's only for 1 hour and you have to wear a mask and you can't get close to people and blah, 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 and you can't talk to people. And if you cough, oh my fucking God, you're going to jail. Like if you cough one time accidentally, all of this sort of stuff, it really got me deeply grateful for life. And I didn't necessarily feel super grateful at the time. I think more than anything, I was just angry and pissed off. I didn't cope with lockdowns that particularly well. I was doing my best, but I didn't have all the peace and the love and the hippy dippy stuff that I've built or that I've been shown over the last 3 or 4 years. But man, it just gave me this, looking back especially, I have this love for life and the rules of you can't go outside and you have to wear a mask. As much as I would say I wouldn't ever personally put those rules on someone else, I am grateful that those rules were put on me because, like I said, they gave me this beautiful appreciation, which I already had to some extent, but they gave me a deeper appreciation for life, for freedom, for, listening to my own intuition and not listening to the experts or the authorities who most of the time don't know what they're doing. They're just human beings and they're trying to do their best, but they are trying to manage millions of people. My country only has a couple of million, but if you're in the US or a bigger country, millions of people. How good a job could you do if your job was to manage millions of people? Probably not that brilliant. I wouldn't do a good job. That's why I have no interest in, I never would anyway, but no interest in anything political or anything like that, because it's like, that's an impossible game from to start with. You're almost, the hubris you have to for to be able to say I can micromanage and manage millions of people's lives and happiness and freedom and love and security and comfort and money and all of that. Fucking hell. That's an ego right there. So, and nothing against the experts or the authorities. That's the point. But you're never going to get it right no matter how hard you try. And your only job is to do your best. And so lockdowns definitely gave me a deeper appreciation of that, of okay, rather than me just hating the government or hating people who tell me what to do or hating authority figures or hating experts, self-declared experts, I can just see them as people that are trying to do their best. And I don't think that I could do a better job. First of all, I wouldn't take the job in the first place, but I don't think I could do a better job. Or if I could do a better job, it would be 20% better, a little bit better. But I have an appreciation for them. I have love for them because they were just human beings trying to do their best. And so funnily enough, for a while during lockdowns, I felt a bit of anger and hatred towards society and other people in general. At the same time, almost like a yin and yang thing, I felt this deep sense of love for other people, especially those who really valued freedom. And the lockdowns and all of those sort of rules really gave me this beautiful opportunity to screen for, to filter out the people that would sit there and listen to authorities and experts and just nod their head without ever questioning anything. And again, nothing against people like that. And if you're someone like that, I have nothing but love in my heart for you. But I probably wouldn't, I try and say this in a kind way, I probably wouldn't be friends with you. And no hatred there, no lack of love. I have nothing but love there. But it gave me this deep, the lockdowns in that time gave me this deep appreciation and the skills for how to actually really intensely filter. And one of the things that I filter for now in friendships and definitely with people that I date and sleep with and coaching clients and even some of you, the audience, I now filter for certain things like freedom. I filter for open-mindedness. I definitely filter for people who don't tell other people that their goals are wrong or stupid or like negative people. I generally speaking don't have any negative people in my life. I wouldn't have someone in my life who operated completely under fear, like from a place of fear. I definitely wouldn't have someone in my life who tells other people what to do. And you'll notice in the comment section, like you'll notice in our community, I guess you could say, everybody I interact with and everybody that's in our community doesn't tell other people what to do. And a big part of that reason is because, going through all the lockdowns, I came to see that it just isn't a kindness to other people telling them what to do, which really is the point of this entire 3-part series, isn't it? The entire reason I'm doing these 3 videos is to show you the pain and it's not so much pain, but it's just that these rules didn't resonate with me, and how it very much went against my own integrity and sense of self to have other people tell me what to do without me saying, wait, do I want to do that? And that's why you'll hear me all the time. You'll see it in comment sections. If you're in my coaching program, you'll just hear this all the freaking time. When someone will say, what should I do, Andy? What do you recommend I do? I will start by saying, what do you want to do? Like, listen to that voice inside yourself, that truth, because there's something divine and sublime and almost like a higher power inside of you that if you listen to it and if you learn how to listen to it, because you might not know how to listen to yourself, you might say, what do I want? And no answers come up. And you're like, I don't fucking know what I want, because you're probably so in the habit or used to having other people tell you what to do. But I always start with saying, what's that voice inside you? What do you want? What would you like to do? What's important to you? And I go from that place. And lockdowns definitely gave me a deep appreciation for that. It helped me sort of filter really intensely in this community, like filter out people who would tell other people what to do, which is why if anyone ever says the word like you should, I just don't respond to that. I can't resonate with that. You should do this. You must do this. You have to do this. You need to do this. And I used to talk like that in the early parts of my content. Like if you go on my blog, especially, you will see me using words like should or need to or have to or must. And most people talk like that. Like Google the word should and see how often people use the word should. Just go on YouTube, go on the homepage, look at all of the trending videos or the recommended videos. Look how many of them have the word should or need to, or you're doing this wrong, or here's the correct way of doing things. And lockdowns, again, I have such a deep gratitude for that period in my life. Imogen does too. We didn't at the time, but we do now, because it really helped us sort of filter out anyone who would impose their views or impose their will on me or her without my consent. We have a word for that, don't we? Rape. And obviously that's a very hyperbolic word, but that word it kind of jumps to mind. I think it's almost like a spiritual rape if you put your views or your desires on someone without them wanting you to, especially if they're actively saying, no, stop. Can you leave me alone, please? I don't agree with that. I think that can work its way to a point of spiritual rape. And that's why I don't anymore tell any of you what to do or tell you what you must do or any of that sort of stuff. So I can sum all of that up by saying I have a deep sense of gratitude for lockdowns and everything that happened then, more than anything, because it really did show me that there were all of these rules, especially people putting like comfort and security and like, longevity, even though, by the way to live a long and healthy life is not to sit at home afraid, pumping cortisol through your body, terrified of death, so much so that you don't live. That's like, and shutting down gyms and not doing exercise and not going outside for vitamin D and fresh air. That's like the dumbest comfort or security strategy ever. But anyway, it really helped me get an appreciation for how people have that rule. And then now when I can see someone trying to put that rule on me, I can recognize it for what it is. And I can meet that person halfway, and I can meet that person with love and empathy. And I can say, I get it now. You're scared. At the time during lockdowns, I just saw everybody who thought like that, which was like 98% of people, maybe 95% of people. And it will be different in different countries. Like if you're in America, many more of you cared about freedom and anti-authoritarianism and all of that. But, at the time I was just angry at all those people, but now I can meet them halfway if there is somebody who's feeling afraid or telling me what they think I should do. And I can see, no, you're just believing your own stories. You're just believing your ego. Your ego is running the show, or you're afraid, or you're scared. And I can even flip that into a love statement. And I can say, I love that you care about your own safety. I love that you care about protecting the elderly. I love that you care about society being protected. I think that's beautiful. Now, the way that you're going about it is actually the opposite of what you would do if you really wanted the things that you want. You can say the same with a lot of causes, right? You could say the same about extreme feminism. It might come from a beautiful place. We want women to just feel nice. That sounds lovely, but maybe the way that you're going about it might be the complete opposite of how you would actually make that happen. But I can see the good intention. I can see the positivity. I can see the love in the thing that the person is doing, and I can express that now. And a lot of that came from lockdowns. All of the spiritual stuff that I've done, like I said, all of the Byron Katie stuff that I've done, all of the David Hawkins stuff that I've done, working with my spiritual coach, Keith, all of that came from lockdowns. Literally, the reason that I saw Keith, my spiritual coach, who's the person who then put me on to Byron Katie and David Hawkins, and the person who got me to start saying I love you to myself in the mirror and really embrace this idea of self-love. And then I've given that to so many of you and so many of my coaching clients. All of that stuff happened literally just because of lockdowns, because I was depressed and I had one day where I was like literally thinking about ending my life, and I was like, holy fuck, I'm suicidal. What the hell? I haven't had a suicidal thought in like, I don't know, like 12 or 13 years. What the hell is going on? Okay, I'm going to improve this. I reached out to my mother. I reached out to Imogen. A couple months later, I'm talking to Keith, my spiritual coach, and we're doing some sessions together. And before I know it, I'm moving in this more spiritual, peaceful, loving path. And so it's funny to look back now, but I'm very grateful for the lockdowns. The final topic where there were a hell of a lot of rules that got put on me, and some of them that I put on myself, was peace. And so there were so many rules I had around the idea of peace or happiness. One of the biggest ones was that the idea of surrender or letting go of things that bother you is somehow weak. And I think especially as a man, and I'm someone that used to be hyper masculine, less so these days, but still plenty of masculinity in me. But I used to have all this like male bravado, and I was really terrified of the idea of like, and I didn't think I was terrified at the time, but looking back, yeah, it was a fear. I was afraid of ever letting go of things that bothered me, or letting go of grudges, or if somebody ever wronged me or I felt like they had, I was afraid of letting that go because I thought that made me weak. And if you think that way, great, like live your life however you want to live. But I've just found so much peace from letting go of the things that bother me. And surrender is a word that I've embraced a hell of a lot more. So is another word, faith. And these were words that used to just disgust me. I used to be a hardcore atheist, and the concept of like having faith in like some higher power, or having faith that things will just work out, or having faith in like the universe will look after me and eventually everything will sort itself out. That concept disgusted me. And the idea of surrendering, oh my God, I thought that was like submission. I thought that was weakness. I used to think submission was weakness. Even in a BDSM setting, I would think like, yeah, I'm stronger than the women that I have sex with. And even though I was very like loving and gentle and kind and all of that, I couldn't help but see submissive partners as like less than somehow. Like they were giving up. Like, yeah, they were having a good time and I was providing that good time for them, and they were giving me a good time too. And we're both having this beautiful, at times, spiritual experience. But there was like this little part of me in the back of my head that was like, yeah, but they're submissive, so therefore I'm slightly better somehow. Like the dominant person is somehow better. And as I've explored ideas of letting go and surrender, and the best book for this is David Hawkins's book, Letting Go. But as I've explored these concepts of letting go of the things that bother me and surrendering to whatever life gives me instead of arguing with reality, another really good book there is Loving What Is by Byron Katie. As I've sort of accepted reality, accepted that today it's a cloudy day, instead of bitching and moaning and saying, why can't it be sunny? Why is it got to be raining today? I sort of surrendered to the fact that, hey, it's raining today. Cool. I probably can't control that. Okay, it's raining. What would I like to do? Do I want to go outside? No. Do I want to take an umbrella? Yes. Do I want to stay at home and, get some stuff done? It's basically accepting reality so you can then make your next move. But in the past, I was arguing with reality all the time. And I think most people do. I was complaining about traffic. I was complaining about people outside. I was complaining about women that wouldn't respond to my text messages. I was complaining about Imogen sometimes. I was complaining about myself all the time. And as I've surrendered to life and all of the different experiences that it might give me, I can call them positive experiences, I can call them negative experiences, I can call them whatever the fuck I want, but all of the experiences that make up this thing that we call life, so many doors have opened, so many opportunities have come from just surrendering. And if that word doesn't resonate with you, you don't have to use that word, but maybe another word that might is acceptance. Accepting the things that you cannot change. It's raining. Okay, I may as well fucking accept that instead of bitching and moaning. Okay, what would I like to do next? I'll grab my umbrella and I'll try and have the best day I possibly can. Acceptance and surrender and letting go of these things has brought me so much peace and, funnily enough, has made me more successful, if that's something that's important to any of you. It probably is, or you wouldn't be listening to this self-improvement channel. But I've achieved more goals. I've achieved goals more effortlessly. I've built deeper connections with other people. I've definitely built deeper connections with myself. I built a deeper connection with life itself, I guess, and a deeper understanding of what life is, at least for me. And I'm a whole lot happier. And like I said, I achieve my goals 10 times easier and 10 times quicker because there is a process of letting go of the things that I cannot control. I talked about this a lot in my video course. So in my Play to Win video course, there's a chapter called Every Problem Has a Solution. And I go through all of the different, solutions that I have come up with or solutions that I can look for. So, I talk through everything here. You can pause this video if you want to read that, or just grab the video course. It's $1. There's a link in the description below. But in here, I have a chapter or a page where I specifically say, sometimes I've found that the solution to a particular problem is accepting reality or accepting the current situation as it is and not arguing with it or wishing it was different. I go on to say this is not the same as giving up. It's accepting that some things are just the way that they are. And then I spend my energy on the things that I can actually change or improve. So in other words, it's sort of like knowing where to spend my time. And don't stress if you're not good at this. I'm not always perfect at knowing when to let go and when to take some action. I give a couple of examples here. Like if a woman doesn't want to date me, I could keep arguing with that and say, why won't she give me a chance? Or I could accept it, let it go or surrender to life and say, hey, look, some people won't like me. This woman doesn't like me, or she doesn't want to date me, or she's busy or whatever. Okay, I'll go and talk to another woman. I will accept the things that I cannot change. I probably can't make her like me. I could try really hard, but 9 times out of 10, that doesn't work. And it just brings me a lot of suffering. Or I could move on and talk to 10 more women in the time that it might take me, maybe 100 more women in the time that it might take me to try and make this one woman like me. What's a better strategy? Or what do I want to do? If a client asks for a refund or something, I could get frustrated and say, that's not fair. Like I put so much effort and love into this, and why would they want a refund? Or I could say, okay, sure, here's your refund. And then I could spend my time screening a little better for the people that are a better fit for the coaching program or for my products or whatever. Or I could just accept that, yeah, some people will ask for a refund. And honestly, I get almost no refunds, but yeah, a couple more examples of losing your job. So again, you can grab this video course. It's called the Play to Win video course. I'll leave a link in the description below. But the point is, letting go of the things that I cannot change has brought me so much peace. And having faith. Faith is something that I talk about a little bit more in my content. Faith is something that I have all the time now. And looking back, I always had faith. I just didn't know what I was having faith in. Faith is also, faith has a lot of connotations. A lot of people hear the word faith and they immediately think religious faith. But I'm not necessarily talking about that, although that's a subsection of faith. What I'm talking about is faith that eventually things will work out, or faith in other people, faith in the people that went before me and achieved things. So again, in my video course, there's a chapter called Overcoming Fear, Limiting Beliefs, and Self-Doubt. And I have a section specifically about faith and letting go. And I talk about the books that have helped me and, giving up to a higher power. And if the concept of God doesn't resonate with you, which it never used to before for me either, you can use the phrase universe or life or something like that, or, the self-improvement process. If I just improve myself, it will eventually pay off, like it has paid off for literally millions or billions of human beings since the dawn of time. If you put in enough effort over a long enough period of time and you don't quit, magical, beautiful things will happen. The power of human perseverance and all of that. But I also talk about how I can let go and have faith in people who are further ahead of me, and they tell me that I can do it too, which is literally what my content is here for. I literally say, it's in my banner image on YouTube and it's all over my blog, and you'll hear me say it. If I can do it, you sure as hell can too. I mean, I say that at the start of every video, don't I? I say, I went from depressed and suicidal to living a life of abundance and joy. If I can do it, you sure as hell can too. That's me helping you let go and have a little bit of trust or faith that maybe you can do it. Maybe you're not a special case. Maybe you're not extra fucked up or broken or wrong or unfixable or unlovable or unworthy or undeserving. Maybe you can do it. And so that is faith. Sometimes it's humility. Sometimes it's literally blind faith. You know what I mean? You're just trusting. I've had so many people that have said, all right, Andy, I'm going to trust you, especially people who sign up for the coaching. Like, understand that if you're even thinking about coaching, but maybe you've been hesitating on pulling the trigger, it is to some extent a leap of faith. And you might be sitting there thinking, oh yeah, but I just need to convince myself first. I need to convince myself this is a good idea. I need to work up the courage to do it. The same as if you're thinking about going outside and like hitting on some women or asking your boss for a promotion. That is a leap of faith. Like, no amount of research will fully prepare you for doing that thing, for signing up for my coaching, for going outside and hitting on someone, for asking for a raise, for going to the gym, for losing weight. Understand that every single one of these things does require a little bit of a leap of faith, and there is some humility in that. And I've just come to see that the more I've embraced faith or taking these leaps of faith, jumping off that cliff and just hoping that everything will be okay, the more I've done that, the more beautiful things have happened. There's a really beautiful YouTube channel that I just love to bits. The channel is called Yes Theory. And the entire point of this channel is they do like crazy, wild things and they run towards discomfort. In fact, their motto is seek discomfort, but they run towards their fears. And that's when the most beautiful stuff happens. And so they've done like all sorts of like crazy, wild shit. Like, look at this. They went to fucking China, one of the least accepting countries of foreigners and strangers, apart from maybe like North Korea or something. They went to fucking China and they just went up to random strangers and said, can we throw a party in your house? And how many people do you think said no? But some people said yes, and they had some beautiful experiences. They also went to China and they have $0 and they have to try and survive there for like 48 hours. So they have to walk up to strangers, again in China, as white foreigners. They have to walk up to strangers and be like, hey, so I don't speak your language and I only speak English, and most of them are not Americans, they're Europeans and shit, but like, I'm a dumb white guy who only speaks one or two languages and not your language. Do you think that I could have some food from you? Do you think I could live with you? Could I stay with you for a day or two? So this entire channel is set around doing these like wild experiments and just these like beautiful experiences that happen when they just have a leap of faith. And they don't use the word faith, but they talk about just like diving in and just trusting that things will be okay. And again, their entire channel is all of the beautiful experiences and stuff that they've had over or during this process of just taking that fucking leap of faith. And so again, if you're thinking of going for your goals, or if you're thinking of signing up for coaching with me, or you're thinking about finally asking that person out at the office that you've always had a crush on, or you're thinking about, you know what, maybe I do want to try some BDSM, but I've just been scared, or, maybe I do want to pull the trigger on whatever goal I have, but I'm scared. Take that leap of faith and just have some faith. Like, it doesn't have to go the way that you want it to go. That's why I say, give yourself permission to suck. And it's okay if unexpected things happen. You'll roll with the punches. You'll be okay. The worst thing that ever happens is a story, as in you tell a story about how something bad happened, but nothing bad really ever happened. I talk about this concept, and man, the video course is proving really relevant today. It usually is, but in the chapter in the video course called Everything That Happens to Me is Good, I basically talk about how to be resilient. In fact, on that note, there's another chapter called Failures, Setbacks, and Stress, How to Become Resilient. So, I cover all these sort of topics in my video course, but I've just found that taking these fucking leaps of faith has just been this beautiful and amazing experience. And a similar rule that I had that I think most people have is you shouldn't let other people walk all over you. And if you let go of things, like if you let go of a grudge, let's say somebody wrongs you, or you tell the story that somebody wronged you and they fucked you over, you shouldn't just let go of that, because then that'll just allow them to keep doing the same thing, or they'll do it to other people. And what I've found is if I let go of grudges, if I let go of all of this stuff, I'm then free to make a proper decision that's not emotional. I can say, well, do I want to cut that person out of my life? Yes or no? Would I like to move away from them and maybe towards people that aren't trying to use me or get something from me? Yeah, I'm free to do that. And I can do that with love in my heart. I then also don't make an enemy out of that person. I can say to them, I have nothing but love for you, and I'm going to go over this way now. And if they say like, oh, why are you leaving? Why are you leaving? I say, because this just isn't what I want, but I love you. I want you to keep doing that. You do whatever you want. You're always going to do what you want anyway. That's what every human being does. And I'm going to go in this direction. And I don't make any enemies along the way. It's just people that I don't want to spend my time with, or people that I don't want to give something to. And that's beautiful. That's okay. That's what it is. So in doing so, I open up the entire world to be my potential friend, including the people that supposedly walk all over me. They're not my enemy. They're just someone who wants something that I don't want to give. Or there's someone who's going through life with a certain philosophy. You got to screw other people over. You got to get something from everyone. And that just doesn't gel with me. A different rule. And I'm going to go in this direction where the people have similar rules to me. And that's beautiful. And then the entire world becomes my friend. Again, nobody's my enemy. They're all my friend. That doesn't mean that I have to invite every single friend into my house, but everybody is my friend. And the world becomes a lot more of a friendly place. It becomes a lot more of a peaceful place. And I become a lot less scared, because I'm not walking around terrified. So I will sum up all of this to say, letting go of some of these rules, or at least just questioning them and seeing if I want to take on these rules and have them apply to my own life. And the answer to that could be yes or no, or I'm going to change the rule a little bit. As I've questioned all of these rules and listened to what that voice inside me says, that divine or that sublime, that beautiful higher power voice inside me that we all have. It's like the inner Noah. It's like your conscience, or whatever you want to call it, your integrity. That voice inside me, as I've listened to that, man, life has become so beautiful when I don't take on other people's rules or expectations for how I should live my life. And when I instead just listen to myself and say, what do I actually want? It makes me into so much more of a kind, loving, warm, open-minded, less judgmental, nice person who's then ironically able to, it's not ironic, but who's then able to give more love and compassion and all of that to other people. And so funnily enough, one of the kindest things that you could ever do for yourself and the rest of society is be a little bit selfish. And when I say the word selfish, you might have all of these connotations around what that means. Oh, so I should fuck over other people and never let anyone else be happy and do whatever I want and just be a selfish prick and not think about anyone else's well-being. No. Why would it be binary? Isn't it funny that as soon as I say the word selfish, a lot of people immediately think, oh, so fucking someone else over. I didn't say that. What I said was be self-loving, self-focused, be kind to yourself. Put on your own oxygen mask, and then that frees you up to help other people. And yes, people often take the concept of selfishness to an extreme level, to the point where it's almost like they're actively, deliberately trying to screw other people over. And I think they're doing their best when they do that. But what's really resonated with me is self-loving, or listening to that honesty and that integrity inside myself, asking myself what I want, and then doing my best to fulfill that in a way that's still kind and compassionate to other human beings, obviously, and enabling them to listen to that inner voice inside them as to what they want, and then facilitating that for them as best I can, or at least encouraging them to do that for themselves. And so it's why I say to all of you, I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'm here to teach you how to think, so that then you can make your own decisions and figure out what's right for you and the people that you love and the people around you, the people that you care about in your own family, friends, community, society, city, country, whatever that might be for you. It's why in coaching, every single time someone comes to the group, I say, what do you want? Or if they ever ask me a question, Andy, what do you recommend that I do? I'll say, well, what do you want to do? And if they say, I really have no idea, then I'll say, okay, let's start figuring out some things that you might like. that you might want. But let's keep focusing in on that. Let's hold a magnifying glass and focus in on that inner voice that you have. Because at the end of the day, I'll say this to all of you, it doesn't matter what I, Andy, want. Like, literally, why does that matter? A lot of what I'm doing, most of you will have no fucking interest in. A lot of you don't have any interest in an open relationship where you have threesomes with other girls and, like you have no interest in that shit. A lot of you are not interested in BDSM. A lot of you are not interested in peace and spirituality and happiness and joy and love and all of that. Like, you want the concepts, but like, you might not be willing to sit there and read. I think at this point I've read like 50, 100 books on this topic over the last like 3 years, and I've meditated for like 1,000 hours, something insane. Like, you might not be interested in that shit. And so what I do in my life and my preferences and my rules or my rule book for life is going to be completely different to yours. And that's a beautiful thing. That's the magic of humanity. That's the magic of society, is that we all want different things. And that's how we're all able to come together. And it's this beautiful big melting pot. And yes, sometimes we bicker and we argue, but even in the bickering and the arguing, there's beauty in that, because there's people saying, I care about this thing so much to the point where I'm getting really upset over it and I'm arguing over it. If they took a step back and said, wow, I guess that means I really love what I do. That's kind of beautiful. And if the other person was able to step back a bit and be like, wow, this person's being a bit of a dick to me because they're really passionate about what they believe. That's kind of beautiful. I like when people are passionate. If we were able to see all of that and see that all the beautiful rules that we have for our own lives are incredible. They're so varied and different and beautiful, and I fucking love that. And so, I've just come to see that listening to that voice inside me brings me untold joy and peace and beauty, and then I'm able to facilitate other people's rules for their own life. And I'm able to say to them, what do you want? What are your rules? How can I help you with those rules? How can I help you live a life that's more honest and has more integrity and is more self-focused in a beautiful way, so that then you're able to give to other people around you? How can I be that for you? How can I listen to that voice for you? As I've said, the more that I listen to that voice that's inside of me, the more I feel honest, the more I feel like I'm acting with integrity. And dare I say it, I said it several times, but I feel closer to the divine, whatever that might mean for you. I feel closer to some beautiful higher purpose that's inside of me, some voice inside me that knows what it wants, and I listen to that, and it's like this beautiful compass or this northern light that can sort of take me through life and guide me. And when I listen to that, it really does feel like I'm more in step with the universe, like I'm in flow with things. It's almost like I'm a leaf on a pond or on a river, just being gently carried, with the current, rather than me swimming against it and fighting it, which just gets exhausting. And I think for a lot of people, a lot of the reason why they're scared or they're angry or they're upset or they're feeling guilt and shame or any of these things that any of you might be feeling, and I obviously feel those things from time to time as well. But if you're feeling those things on a deep level, it might be because you're swimming against the current. It might be because you're taking on other people's rules for your life and other people's blueprints and society's blueprints and the government's blueprints and your parents' blueprints and schools' blueprints and all of those sort of rules that were put on you. And maybe if you accept and use those rules without actually checking first to see if you want them, you might actually just be fighting against the current. You might be trying to swim upstream when maybe if you just question those rules and figure out what you actually want to do, you could lay back a little bit and just let the current take you wherever the hell it wants to take you. But at the end of the day, if you don't even want to do that, if this video was just entertaining to you and you have no intention of questioning the rules around you or seeing through the matrix, for want of a better analogy, that's beautiful too. At the end of the day, I would like you to do whatever you would like to do. If you would like more help with any of this, obviously I have coaching. I have $200 coaching calls, or you can join our hardcore 12-week kick your ass into gear coaching program. I'll leave links in the description below to that. I'll tell you something funny. I'll leave you all with something funny, since we're speaking about rules. So I use this phrase or this turn of phrase a lot where I say, let's kick your ass into gear and get you achieving those goals. Like a motivational sentence, like a David Goggins or like a, Tony Robbins, like a, let's get fired up, baby. Let's kick your ass into gear and do something beautiful together. I use it like that. And I've been using that phrase forever in our coaching program. And as part of our coaching program, we have like a Facebook group. We have a bunch of other shit in there too, but we have a Facebook group. And in my own Facebook group, so in my own coaching group on Facebook, I got this like warning from Facebook that said like a post you made recently goes against our terms and conditions for inciting violence, and we believe this to be a credible threat. And I was like, wait, something I posted or something someone else posted? And I misread it. I thought, oh, someone in the group must have, like, I can't imagine what they must have said. Holy shit. Like, and so I go in there and I have a look, and it's my post where there was a new guy that joined the group, and I was like, let's welcome the newest member of the group, because I post that to everyone, or I post that about everyone who joins, and I'm like, let's welcome the newest member of the group. Here's his goals he's working on. Here's where he's currently at. Man, this guy's like a beautiful soul. Let's like build him the life that he wants to live. Let's all rally around him and kick his ass into gear and get him achieving those goals. He thinks it's going to take him 3 months, but I reckon we can get him to do it in 2 months. Let's get him happy. Let's get him smiling. Let's do this thing together. And everyone replied, and they're like, hell yeah, welcome to the group. And he replies and he's like, thank you. And then it was that post that Facebook is like, this is a credible threat that's inciting violence. And I was like, what the hell? And I read it like 10 times, and I showed it to Cam, I showed it to Imogen. I was like cracking the hell up. I was like, what did I say that was violent? And then it clicked, and I was like, wait, did they take the phrase of like, let's kick his ass into gear and get him achieving his goals? Did they think I was saying, let's kick his ass in a post that is entirely motivational? And so, obviously I'm cracking up, and I'm like, oh, it's just the robots, and, the AI is misreading something. Fair enough. You run a big international conglomerate corporation. I'm sure you have billions of posts that you have to read every day. I understand that some of them would be flagged incorrectly. Fair enough. So I appeal it. 3 days later, it comes back like, no, we've reviewed this post. We believe it to be a credible threat. And I'm like, and I giggle. I laugh so hard. I was like, this is like, am I living in crazy town or something? But again, fair enough. You probably see, or they probably see millions of these posts. I don't even believe that a human reviewed it. Like maybe they did, maybe they didn't. But even if they did, it's probably some person that has to review hundreds or thousands of these a day. I don't expect them to take the time to find the subtlety and the nuance in it. So I basically had to write this big letter and send it to this outside board of like a third party board that is like a trustee or an overseer of like Facebook and how they run. And I filled everything out. I was like, look, it's clearly a very loving post. Literally everything I wrote in the post is like, let's motivate this guy. Let's build him a beautiful life. We love him. And all the comments were like, yay, we love you. Welcome. Like the guy himself didn't think it was like, anyway, so I appealed that. Doesn't really matter what's happened with it, because the worst case scenario is they delete, my coaching Facebook group. I just make another one. I already have a backup one anyway that we've made, so nothing bad would happen. But I just thought that was fucking hilarious, and I thought I would tell you all, because you might have heard me in this, at the end of this video to you, I literally said, I'll kick your ass into gear. And then something in my head was like, wait, I can't say that anymore. But it's just such a common thing that I say when I talk about coaching. I'm like, yeah, let's kick your ass into gear. You've probably been sitting around like, maybe going at like 25% speed. Let's kick your ass into gear and go at 110%. Let's build you a beautiful life. I'm so used to saying, let's kick your ass into gear. So yeah, if any of you made it this far in the video, leave a comment. Fuck it. Let's do this. It'd be funny. Leave a comment saying like the phrase, let's kick your ass, but you have to say it in a positive way. Like, please don't say it in a violent way. I am not encouraging people to incite violence, but let's come up with all the funny ways we can say, let's kick your ass, let's kick your ass into gear. That's the only one I can think of, but I find that very funny. I find a lot of these things funny. It can't be easy to manage such a massive platform, like Twitter or Twitch or YouTube or Facebook or Instagram or any of these. I can't even imagine what it must be like to try and enforce the rules and stuff like that. But yeah, I have nothing but love for Facebook. I really appreciate that Facebook lets me host my coaching group or part of it. We have a couple of other platforms as well that we use, but big shout out to Facebook. Big shout out to violence. I also find it funny that, like, could you guys and girls imagine me inciting violence? I think that's funny. I find that funny. But anyway, if you'd like to join the coaching group, and I promise you we won't incite violence, we will improve your life, we'll change your life, we'll do whatever you would like, and we will start with the question of what do you want? I'm happy to jump on a free call with you and talk it through. Happy to do payment plans if you need to. Like I said, I have the $200 coaching calls as well. You can use those almost like a little test to see what coaching is like. I've had so many people do the $200 calls and then go, screw it, man. I think I'm going to join the coaching program. So All of that is available. I will also leave a link to the video course that I showed on screen a couple of times. As always, ladies and gentlemen, go out there and crush those goals in whatever way that makes the most sense to you. At the end of the day, it's your life. You can set whatever rules you want for it. It's your life. We're all just living in it.